Oh, I'm pinging. Oh, big bug spotted. And just like that, big bug gone. Hello, everyone. I am thrilled to say we've got Hey But Faster back after the great emote purge. Hello, Sam. Hello, Leonard. Lyphora, Alexis, Donkus, Tortilla. Silvera's here, Leonard, Dan, Lil Moped, Juggling Grenades. Shrimp Baby's back. Nikki Rosecat, hello. Hello, Mother. Welcome to the stream. Hey, but faster, my beloved. Exactly, Courtney. Exactly. London Brawley, hello. And Rev6181, Flickmac. The gang's all here, y'all. Welcome to Bug Hunts. I saw someone ask what's happening or what's going on. On Wednesday nights, we use the pasture cam to look around and see what kind of fun insect stuff we can do and what we can find. We've had some good luck the past couple weeks, so we'll see if we can keep that up. Shrimp, Shrimp baby, yes. No unanswered texts from Maya. I have in fact responded to all of them. Tortilla, we have golf ball the baseball sized hail. How many bugs are gonna die? That's. I, I'm worried about you with baseball sized hail. Um, I think bugs would probably be fine with hail, realistically. The chances of an individual insect getting hit by hail, I think, are probably pretty small. I mean, I'm sure some of them might get hit, but like in the grand scheme of things, statistically, bugs are probably not gonna get hit. So that's a relief. Uh, Joking grenades. No, Maya did not tell me that I can't game yet, but that's true. I'm not gonna be offended like like Primogen or Caroline. Uh, my laptop will not run games. Car gets killed by Hail Club. Hopefully not. Spaghetti Roo, show me the bugs. I'm excited. I love bugs. Yes, I do too. That's why we're here. Did any of y'all see any good bugs this week? It hit 98 today here in Phoenix. That's like 34 Celsius, maybe? Something around there. And that means it's heating up, and that means that bugs are out. I went on my first IRL bug hunt of the season on Sunday night. So, officially, it is back. It is time. And I'll be spending more and more time outdoors. I'm actually going out again tomorrow night. So, 'tis the season. Arizona has decidedly skipped spring. We've gone straight to summer. We have not had as much rain as we usually get in the winter. So when I was out on Sunday night, um, it was very slow. There were not that many cool bugs, but all bugs are cool, and it was still nice to get out and see a couple things. Tortilla, what kind of beetle was in your mom's hair? Oh, rocks are snowbird clearwing. Sick. Big bees, ladybirds. Courtney sees her buggies every day. Cricket. Cricket, welcome in. Courtney sees the bugs every day. Oh, your first jewel beetle. Hell yeah. You get a picture of it? Hopefully. Little flies on a strawberry. See? Y'all, the bugs are coming back for everyone. That's the most stuff I think people have seen when I've asked that question. We got a lot of diversity. We've got, as far as I know, quite a bit of geographic representation. Lots of different kinds of bugs that people are seeing, so that's very exciting. Ooh, cedar beetle. That's actually a real cool one. What is the rare bug that you've seen or one that shocked you in a location? I am tie-dye. Hello. Um, Honestly, I guess I'll just go with one that I saw on Sunday. I found a snakefly, which is the order Raphidioptera. Um, I have only ever seen them twice before. And typically you find them in northern Arizona, at least where I'm at. They're a western group that sort of looks like a lacewing, but then has the elongate neck of a praying mantis, but without the grabby arms, without the raptorial legs. Thank you, Tortilla. Appreciate that. Um, and as far as I know, they are a pretty high elevation thing. I've found them in northern Arizona or in my area just when I was lighting on top of a mountain. Um, but this week on Sunday, I was out with the guy who actually designed the bug lights that Maya bought and the ones that I recommended. Um, and we were in low desert. You know, we were surrounded by cacti. We were not very high up. And with it being as dry as it was, I was excited to get two individual ground beetles, you know, two different species. And then the guy I was with works on longhorn beetles. Ooh, spider. Ooh, a spider. We've got some reflection chat. What's that mean? The bugs are warming up, so we're going to have more quiz time like this. Silvera, Sam, Flickmack, Little Moped. Hey, everybody's getting it. Wolf spiders, yes. Donkus, big brain. The eyes are reflective. And there it goes. So, for those of you who maybe haven't been at bug hunt before, wolf spiders we see pretty commonly. They are a rather comparatively large, kind of ground dwelling spider, and they have a special lens at the back of their eye, and it's the same lens or the same membrane that like cats have called the tapetum lucidum. Um, and that's what allows their lights to reflect in the UV like this. And you'll notice if it gets to turn sideways again, you'll see that you can't really notice the spinnerets. So the little fingers or the little bits on the tip of the abdomen that actually lay the silk down. We've seen some other spiders recently, the Naphosid, the ground spider, that had really noticeable, like short, stout spinnerets, and their eyes don't glow. So somebody mentioned something in the Discord today, exclamation point bug cord for those of you not in there. Um, that said something like, I'd like to take a peek inside of Evan's brain and how he knows what all of these things are. And I think I do need to be better about that, especially with the pollinator garden stuff coming up. Um, Not everybody has a background with entomology, and so even simple insect anatomy terms are going to need to be explained. And understanding why something is what it is a big part of identifying insects. But the problem is a lot of the time that the defining characters, the things that like definitely make it that thing, are small and are usually meant to be observed under a microscope. And so translating that into like field guide, uh, flow chart type of uh, content um, really means that we're identifying things based on vibes. And it's like I know that that's a scarab beetle, but a lot of the time that the things that make it a scarab beetle aren't visible all the time. A lot of the times the antennae are tucked. We're not able to see how many uh, little pieces are on the front and hind feet. So it's a scarab, and essentially it boils down to being able to identify them like that is because I've seen a lot of scarabs and like I know what it looks like. So it's all practice, you know? You know what something is and you learn the defining characters, but then you see specimens or you see people's posts in the Discord or on Instagram or Facebook groups or whatever it is, and you get the feel for like what those things look like. Um, and it really does come down a lot to vibe based identification. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But it is sometimes hard to justify why things are what they are. The wolf spiders are pretty easy. Thankfully, you can see some of these characters, especially with our fancy cameras here. Um, Looking at a wolf spider specimen, like in hand at a museum or something like that, you don't get eye reflection. And so that's like a field mark rather than an actual physical character, because that's not something you'd be able to see better under a microscope. Tortilla looks sac spider is the thing I have typed. Oh, absolutely. And even that is like helpful to a lot of people. The bug Discord, I think, in our case, is a little bit different because it's like an enthusiasts area, right? There's some interest level of bug there, and even if you're learning from people that actually kind of know what's happening. Oh, we got a raccoon. What is this, Allison's house? Friend outside the fence. I kind of want to see him climb over. I also kind of want to see what Stompy does. Oh, look at him. I love raccoons, y'all. All of the like trash animals in North America, raccoons, possums, and skunks, man, they're some of nature's peak designs. Little stripy tail. Yeah, we can pause bug chat if we ever get anything fun like this. We got a little raccoon going on here. Uh, that is a good question, Casual. So Casual asked, are there any bugs that live specifically on raccoons? And citing the example of beaver beetles, which I know I have talked about those before. I don't think so. I don't know of any off the top of my head, but I can certainly Google that and see what I can find after we're done here. The reason I don't think that there would be. Oh, he's breaking. Oh my god, look at him. He's a little bandit. He's going to steal grain. Hi, Bree. Yeah, we're here for bug hunt. Chord very good. Carnivora, Procyon. The other two North American mammals in Procyon are Coatamundi and the ringtail, which is Arizona's state mammal. I've actually seen all three of those, all three of the raccoon relatives in Arizona. Ooh, Tortilla's teaching me things. Maybe. So that's a funky thing with Bug Guide. That person found it on a raccoon, but I don't know if that's specifically a species that is only on raccoons. Oh, apparently it is. Yeah. A chewing louse that parasitizes raccoons and their North American subspecies. It is recognizable by the 8 circular spots on its broad head. Would you look at that? I'm learning something new. So apparently, yes, there are specific lice. We got bowled over by a raccoon. Athletes, 100% on your mammal practical. Very good. Congratulations. He's looking around, man. This is great. I love mammal bug hunt. Yeah, definitely get the clips. This is good content here. I was going to say I don't know that raccoons would have specific bugs on them because they're like such a general feeder thing. Uh they're not doing anything super specific like beavers. And so any parasites that would be on them I think would probably be transferable between other small mammals. Um but I guess they all do have, they nest in different places. So there are whole families of fleas that are unique to squirrels as compared to the ones that are on rats, as opposed to the ones that are on cats and dogs. Um, yeah, casual. You're reading my mind here. Uh, there are different louse and flea species that prefer different animals. Um, it's just a matter of transference then of like them being in close enough contact to go between members of the same species. One time when I was back in Pennsylvania, it was kind of sad, but I watched the car in front of me hit a squirrel. Very unfortunate, but being an entomologist, I went, I bet there's squirrel fleas on that thing. And so I grabbed a plastic bag from the back seat of the car, paid my respects to the little squirrel, and picked him up. And I come home with this little plastic bag full of stuff, and I start to go down into the basement at my grandparents' house. And my grandmother goes, what's in the bag? What are you doing? And I'm like, Grandma, don't ask questions you don't want the actual answers to. uh, and so I took him down to the freezer, and then the theory behind that is that the lice will then freeze and fall off the squirrel. So rather than just having to deal with trying to comb them off the squirrel, uh, they just fall off into the bag. And that's exactly what happened. I left it in there for like a day and got my squirrel fleas. I still have them somewhere. I bet I can find them and post a picture in the bug chat. Not of the unfortunately deceased squirrel, but of my little vial of squirrel fleas. Um, but yeah, parasites are really neat because a lot of them are specialized. There are different lice that live on pigs versus on horses versus on cattle. And you get the same thing, like I said, fleas are different on squirrels and on rats and things like that. Do I make flea tea as well? No. Fleas are interesting because you have to like slide mount them, usually to like properly store them long term. Uh, and that's just like a whole other process. I've done it. It's not the easiest thing, and I also don't have my own equipment to do that. So I have them still in ethanol, and being able to identify them based off of what I collected them off of is pretty easy. So I don't make flea tea, and for those of you that aren't sure what Donkus is talking about, when I pin my beetles, I'll oftentimes heat them up in hot water and jokingly make beetle tea. I do not drink it, but it looks like I'm brewing tea. Spaghetti roos. Do you think this is an entomologist thing or more of a you specific thing? You know, I don't know that I've ever been read like a book like that before. I truly do think it is an entomologist. Um, I really appreciate this raccoon providing the entertainment for me to talk about this. Uh, I think entomologists are a special type of weird that we will go to some pretty extraordinary lengths in order to collect cool bugs. Um, Catching up. Do you know with the squirrel freezer? Tortilla, it's not just squirrel freezer though. That's the thing, and like that's what I was responding to the other question too. I told you guys about that Thanksgiving episode that I did right before the holidays, talking about that entomologist that went turkey hunting and noticed that there were lots of lice on this turkey that he then froze the skin, got all the lice off of it, and identified all four species of lice known to occur on turkeys on one bird and wrote a paper on it. And that's like the same level, I think. There's a picture of me in, my kind of nice clothes looking through uh, a roadkill deer on the way home from a conference with my master's advisor. Uh, I am not the only entomologist that specifically carries gloves and stuff in their car for looking through roadkill for things. I have a friend who works on nitidulids, which are generally sap feeding beetles, but there are also some that will come into like late stage decomposition of things when like there's roadkill and all of the gooey bits are gone and it's just left with skin. Um, and there's a famous anecdote of this friend uh, picking up a partially or no, it was like an immature elk that had been hit by a car and had dried out enough that he took the elk and swung it and basically hit the elk against the road, to knock all of the beetles that are on this carcass off. So I don't think it's just a me thing. I really do think it is an entomologist thing. Um, because we thrive on stories like that. Uh, of like finding cool specimens in cool ways. Um, I know the first owl fly that I Connor busted. Uh, Tasman Gaming. So you're all of CSI when Grissom went crazy with the bugs in episodes A. Yeah, true. So, um, Gil Grissom was a forensic entomologist, and that's super cool and everything, but in some of those episodes, there are posters in the back that are like detailing fly life cycles and stuff like that. And when I was an undergrad, I did an internship in the urban entomology lab, and those posters were actually made in the lab at the University of Florida that I worked at. They were made before I got there, so I had like no part in that. But yeah, the entomology stuff in CSI is generally pretty accurate. I haven't watched all of the episodes, but they specifically did try to get that right. Um, which I always appreciate. I know I've talked about inaccuracies with bugs in movies and stuff before, but sometimes they do try to get it right, which is very fun. Yeah, it's got to be Pedro, right? Oh, Maya's here. Hey, boss. Yes, Cotton 4K. Everybody from staff is coming in tonight. Hello, everybody. Yeah, we haven't found any bugs yet because we've been following this guy around, but that's okay. I think this is pretty interesting. Good find. What did you think of the moth representation in Silence of the Lambs? Um, it was an interesting choice. So those death's head hawk moths, people do raise those. They are an old world species. I actually saw some uh in Thailand when I was there last summer. And people do recreationally raise them over there, sort of like we do with monarchs and stuff like that. You can order them online, and so Kill Bill having them wasn't like completely outrageous. Oh, Shirty, hello everybody. um, I haven't seen that movie in a while, to be honest. Shrimp Baby. I'll have to go back and rewatch it. But yeah, the mods they were using were real, which was good. A lot of times people will make some like fake entomology representation to kind of get like a specific moth or something designed that perfectly fits the theme. The Death's Head Hawk Moth looks like that. It just looks like that naturally. So it was a natural natural choice to be able to play that part in that movie. Dr. Nick Suki. Catching up. Uh, Super terrific. Good question. How effective are spermatophores? What is the impregnation rate compared to how mammals do it? Um, I don't know how effective it is compared to mammals, but in general, it's still really effective. You know, they don't have another way to do it. So it has to be just as effective as direct transmission like you have with humans. That is the way that their mating system has evolved, so it works, right? They haven't died out, and um it hasn't ever really been seen as a negative, only that other options do work just as well. So there's more lead up and more fiddliness where it could go wrong. With scorpions, like laying the spermatophore on the ground, it's possible that something happens before the male can lead the female over their spermatophore. And then they wouldn't be able to mate then. And you have the same thing with like spiders. They uptake the sperm into the pedipalps and then have to go head on with the female to try and mate. And then she potentially eats him. And that's just another thing that like has to go into the mating process, that it works sometimes, it doesn't work other times. But spermatophores in general are not just like laid and then forgotten about. They will usually direct the female to them in some way to be able to pick up and complete the mating there. What is your response to people that wanting to wipe out all mosquitoes, flies, ticks, bedbugs, and other parasitic bugs? I would guess they all fill some niche and must be important in several ways. Yeah, Courtney, I've thought about that a lot, particularly with parasites. And the hidden diversity that we don't even know about that gets lost when more charismatic fauna go extinct. Um, like maybe the dodo had some really cool lice that were on it that we just don't know about because we don't have samples and the dodos are now extinct. Uh, Eradicating species is never a good idea for nature. However, I do recognize that humans have a very human centric look at how things should be. And so I understand wanting to control them to prevent issues with humans, but completely eradicating things I don't think is ever the ever the best idea. Gotta catch up here. Bed bugs are a freaky spot. That's fine. Thick duck ass spider. All right, what's this one, y'all? Globular. We've covered this one before. Does anyone know? Not a black widow, not an orb weaver, not an orb weaver, not Santa. Looks gravid AF, yes. Brown something. Oh, orb booty, orb weaver. Forgore tunnel. No. Terry got it. Ooh, just after rock, salt, rock and tasky. Yes. Crab spiders. So do you remember last week where we had that really haggard looking guy that was missing like 3 legs? And we could tell it was a male because of the pedipalps. This is a female. So this is Zysticus, I think is how you pronounce that genus. You're good, Salt Rock. I'm just gonna call you Salt Rock from now on. I try to read everyone's in whole in its entirety the first time, but people get nicknames. Tortilla, how can I tell? Great question. So the leg positioning on these ones are pretty characteristic. So last time we talked about that male crab spider, and you could see that his front legs were longer than the back legs. And you can see that here too. As she's crawling, you'll notice that the front 2 pairs of legs are noticeably longer than the back two, and that's because of how they hunt. They will sit and wait, usually on flowers, but there are also ground crab spiders, which is what that one was. And they sit and wait. They're ambush predators. They wait for things to come by, and they will then grab them with their two front legs and pull them in to the mouth parts in order to be able to feed. So they always kind of look like they're going for a hug, and that leg proportioning, where the front two pairs of legs are longer than the back two, is a pretty good characteristic for crab spiders. They also usually have a pretty flattened but wide abdomen. Um, Hers was definitely a bit distended. Uh, she did look gravid AF, as someone put it, which is just means that she has eggs. She's probably going to try to find a spot to lay those sooner or later. Um, but I can post pictures, or maybe I did last time, I think, about the crab spiders where they have, I seashell's not the right shape, but they have like kind of a top to bottom flattened abdomen, not completely bulbous and round like you would see with an orb weaver. But yes, very good. We're starting to get those recognition skills tied in here. We're starting to see familiar faces and familiar bug shapes here on Bug Hunt. Casual. Is she a single mom who works two jobs type of mom? Loves her kids and never stops. Carries baby rounds after they hatch. No. Um, so crab spiders will not do that. They lay egg sacs and then the babies are basically on their own. Um, there are a couple of species that will hang around near where she's laid her eggs and do a little bit of watching over them. But in general, after they hatch, they will spend one instar in the egg sac, and then they'll hatch out basically fully ready to go collect uh, and catch their own food. They will balloon away, so crab spiders are one of the groups where they will send up silk and let the wind take them. And that's a dispersal technique because if you're a little tiny spider, crawling across the ground is dangerous, and you also wouldn't get very far. So the wind will pick them up by these little strands of silk, disperse them far off into different plants, different bushes, and things like that, where they can then set up and start finding their own food, exactly like Charlotte's Web. Very good, Dunkus. Um, and that's where the idea that like spiders can fly comes from. That's like in certain ways, yes, they can, but they're not just like taking off with wings as adults. So crab spiders will often balloon. And sometimes you can catch them in air and then be able to catch their own food. They can start off with very, very tiny things like fruit flies, and then they'll move up to bigger and bigger things. Adult crab spiders will take butterflies, they'll take bees, they'll take hoverflies, uh, all that good stuff. Silvera, yes. Garden spiders are orb weavers, and a lot of orb weavers, just like Charlotte's Web, will do that ballooning thing. Yeah, Tortilla. The Guro spiders is the big thing where people got onto the bugs flying. Guro spiders are big. They are very, very big. 4 or 5 inch diagonal leg span. Like it is a big spider. But they're not flying when they're adults. They're not ballooning when they're 5 inches long. Uh they're ballooning when they're a couple of millimeters long when they first hatch. So nobody ever gets that right. That is a big misconception and one of the many, many untrue insect myths. It's also a myth that they're spreading. My lab, the spider lab that I worked in during my undergrad, we went up and collected Joro spiders in Atlanta in 2014, which was the year after they had been found in the US. And just 2 years ago, they were finally found in South Carolina. So it took them basically 10 years to move one state over. And the media took that and ran. Um, my mom sent me links about that stuff that they were talking about it in like the news outlets up in Pennsylvania and New York and Ohio and things like that. It's there's no chance that it gets up to New England in any sense of the way. We do have native spiders that are very closely related to the Joro spider, the golden silk orb weaver. Um, but they're all down south, like Florida to Texas area, sort of thing. Um, they don't get any further north than like the Carolinas, so they're not getting up into Pennsylvania or anything like that. So, uh, yeah, that's not what going on. I'm talking right now. Bug hunts, yes. XYZSS. Is it possible to train insects? If yes, how and which ones? Um, Not in the same way that you train other things. Um, I would say that you can get insects habituated and used to certain behaviors um, that you can repeat with some sort of input. But I can't set a bug across the room and like just say come here or do the pss, pss, pss thing you do with cats and it would come over. Um, there was a little bit of that in maybe it was 2 weeks ago where we talked about bugs in Hollywood, and there's a guy who's like a professional bug wrangler for Hollywood getting them to do quote unquote stunts. There was this interview with a guy who worked on arachnophobia and like how you got the insect or the spider to specifically crawl pretty far across a room under a bed or something like that. And he had talked about different ways to do it. Um, a lot of the time with training bugs like that, you're just asking them to do a natural behavior. And so if you need like a mantis to flare up, you can make it do that by aggravating it a little bit, which is not always super healthy or super unstressful for the bugs, but that is a way to do that. Um, Bumblebees can also play soccer, and I know that's like a super wild tangent to go on, but it relates, I promise. Um, there was a study done, and I can link it. I'll send it in the Discord later. But they gave bees little tiny soccer balls and wanted them to put the soccer ball into a hole like they were playing soccer, and then they got some sort of reward. And so it did work. I don't remember what like the goal of the experiment was. I think it was something like cognition thing of like introducing a novel behavior to arthropods and being able to like have them remember that. But yeah, that did work. They were in fact able to get the bees to play with soccer balls. But there are insects that are generally accepted as being like better at recognizing things than others. Made from Chaos makes a good point here on jumping spiders. Jumping spiders and mantids are often like presented as being the smarter bugs. Jumping spiders are very, very charismatic. They've got great eyesight, and because they're visual predators, you can get them to do a lot of like sight training. Um, Basically doing target practice like all the animal care stuff does with like the marms and all the other animals here at Alveus. Uh, where you can get a jumping spider to go from on your hand to a little spot in their cage. And mantids are also generally very responsive, and can work through things. Uh, they've put 3D glasses on a mantis before. They made like little red and blue glasses that they put on a mantis in order to test some sort of 3D vision. I don't remember the outcome of that one either. Those are like popular science papers that like I know were written, but I'd never had to read um, specifically for my research, so I don't fully know what happens with that. But you can apparently put 3D glasses on a praying mantis. What that accomplishes, I don't remember, and I'll have to read the paper before I send it in the chat's recap on the bug Discord. But bug court, yeah, there you go. Thanks, Sam. Bug soccer. Jamie does the things, yes. Honeybees specifically are domesticated. Um, there are a lot of bees out there, but honeybees are the only ones we have fully domesticated, and there are only 3 insects that we consider ourselves to have domesticated. You've got honeybees, because we use them in mass like agriculture for producing honey. Silkworms, any sort of silk handkerchief or tie or bed sheet or whatever that you've had, that silk comes from a silkworm moth, the cocoons of which are made out of one single thread of silk that can be as long as 2 football fields from a single caterpillar. And then they harvest that and make the actual fabric of silk. And so we've been farming those for many, many, many thousands of years. And they feed on mulberry leaves. So that's the second domesticated insect. And then we also have cochineal scale, the insect where we get the red dye in some food colorings, like we talked about with Mike and Ike's and jelly beans. That red dye in there is called carmine, and that comes from a scale insect that is found on cacti. And so they have these cactus farms where they purposefully infect the cactus with these little scale insects that they can then brush off and use in dye production. So those are the three domesticated insects that we have. And of those, yeah, honeybees. Well, that's an interesting question. Now that I think about that, in the U.S., we only have one species of honeybee, but worldwide, I think there are like 13 species in the genus that all make honey. Um, yeah, so I guess it would just be probably the European honeybee then that we have domesticated. Like Apis dorsata and Apis cerana, we probably don't actually have those fully domesticated. I'll have to think about that. I'll ask my bee people about that one. Because everything that I've heard is this that conventional wisdom is that we have 3, but there are other members in the genus Apis. Hmm, that's a head scratcher. I'll have to come back to that one. Are complex eyes more like super wide vision or a bunch of small images stitched together? That that's a great question, juggling grenades. So, I don't think we've talked about this before. Uh, Vank 86, yeah, we're that lac scale shellac gel. You use it for varnishing tables, but you also use it for the shiny coating on the outsides of candies. That's a good question, juggling grenades. We haven't really talked about insect vision. We've talked a lot about like the spider eye patterning and spider vision. You've probably seen those like toy glasses that give you quote unquote bug vision. And it's just like little tiny cells, and you see the same picture like a bunch of times in just like small little hexagons. However, that doesn't really make sense, does it? Like, seeing the same image a bunch of different times doesn't actually help you get any better resolution. So, the way that insects actually see, the way that insect vision actually works with their compound eyes, which are different than the simple eyes that are called ocelli, that are just like shadow sensors, it's like pixels. And that makes a lot of sense and is like a really good explanation for here on Twitch, because y'all inherently understand the more pixels you have, the clearer of a picture you're going to get. And so there are some insects that only have like 10 facets in their eye. So that's basically like them having 10 pixels. They don't get a very good picture, but they get a decent thing where they can tell that, like, okay, that big area over there, which might be a flower field, is a different color than the area that I'm on top of now, or at least looks different than what I'm looking at now. But then you have flies and things like that that have really complex uh, compound eyes, that they have, I don't know how many. I couldn't even begin to throw a number out with how many eye facets that like houseflies or mantids have. But it's a lot. And so they're not seeing in super high quality like we are, but things like bees and things like mantids can definitely see outlines of things, and they can get vague shapes because they have that higher resolution. They have those like higher pixel counts where you're able to instead make out, oh yeah, like that's just a different, like that's kind of a black blob over there, versus, oh, I can tell that that's like a tree, or they can see maybe the outline of a car. So yeah, insect vision doesn't work like those plastic toys make you think it does, but it is still pretty cool. I can send pictures. I saw someone question 10. Yeah, there are some insects that have like a singular eye facet, and they're subterranean and like evolutionarily probably in the process of completely losing their vision. Maya's talked about that on World's Wildest as well, of like animals losing vision when living in caves. There are a lot of insects that have lost vision because they live either in caves or spend all of their time underground. But then you, like I said, have the higher resolution, the higher pixel count, the 4K vision, at least comparatively, of fly compound eyes. Tortilla's dropping a picture here for us. Ooh, those look tasty. I would eat those facets. Um, but yeah, so you can see, like, just in that image how many individual quote unquote pixels there are here. And this is just a portion of the eye. Over the whole thing, you're actually able to see a pretty in-depth picture for what you would expect for insect vision. So that's pretty cool. And was a very, very good question. And then, so the other thing that I was mentioning there is that insects also have simple eyes. Um, Things like bees, things like mantids, things like grasshoppers will oftentimes have 1 to 3 uh, little dots basically on their forehead, and they look like little jewels sometimes. Oftentimes they're red, and those are ocelli. OCELI, I think is the plural for those. Um, and those are basically just like light sensors. They can tell if there's a shadow, they can tell if there's sunlight, but those are the simple eyes that they use for basically that sort of thing. And then the compound eyes, the big ones on the side that look like bug eyes, are called compound eyes. Is the eye looking at a mug of sudsy beer? Oh, interesting. I don't think so. Who asked that? Thank. I don't think so. Things like horseflies will oftentimes have patterning on the eyes. And so I think that's probably what we're looking at here, is that those like yellow yellow facets of the eye and the black facets, I think that probably makes a pattern on the eye and is not specifically a reflection of something that insect is looking at. Very cool. All right, wow. That we flew by fast on that one. We are just about out of time for this week. Does anybody have any last minute questions? Stick Insects Anonymous. All right, last question. Beth 2K19. Do tarantulas grow as big as your fear, or is it a myth? I heard this at 14, and it made my fear worse. What I think is it just grows a bit bigger. That depends on the tarantula. There are some tarantulas that they will have like an 11-inch leg span, but most of them are not that big. There are dwarf species that, as adults, their leg span is only about 2 inches. So tarantulas are not just one thing. There's like over 1,100 species of tarantula worldwide, and some of them do get quite big. Goliath bird-eating tarantulas are like the largest species of spider on the planet. But then they also do get a lot smaller than you would expect, where you would look at it and probably go, I don't know that that's a tarantula. So the answer to that question, as it so often is with insects and with bugs in general, is that it varies, and it's hard to answer that with a distinct yes or no. Um, Diversity in arthropods is huge. If you've seen Maya streams lately, she's throwing out the numbers of beetles between 350 and 400,000 species, and that's just beetles. Of all arthropods, it's something like 1.3 million. And so the answers are very, very infrequently straightforward. But Beth, I'm glad you stuck around, even if you are slightly afraid of spiders, tarantulas maybe in particular. But if you have fear of them, truthfully, I know it's not the easiest thing, but the more you learn about them, the less scary they become. Um, I don't know that I've seen you in chat for bug hunts before, so you might not know, but uh, I was afraid of spiders for most of my life. And when I switched my major to entomology and kind of realized that I was going to be around spiders a lot more, I started learning more about them, and now I've gone completely the opposite direction, and I've got a bunch of tarantula pets at home. And so I understand people have aversions to things, and that's totally fine. I totally get it. But part of our goal with bug hunt streams in general is making people at least more bug neutral, if not bug positive. Because I understand for some people it is a big step going from no to uh, liking them. All right, y'all. Great way to end it. Appreciate you all for being here. Thank you, Logan, for doing the driving. Thank you all for being here. Hit an exclamation point enter to be entered to win the Bug Hunt tee. Thank you to whoever gifted that. Didn't see who did that. But yeah, thanks y'all. I will see you next time, and good luck with the giveaway.